Are we live then or not? No.
I'll tell you in a moment. We are live.
Are we live then or not? No. Are we? Is it actually? Is it working? Oh yeah, that's funny.
Everybody,
Are we? But I see a small delay. That's funny. Okay. So hi everyone. We are Denise. This is our first time being live on YouTube ever. So apart from Enrico and Joe, who have some experience, we probably come across as super noobs, but we will just see. I mean, our plan is to introduce ourselves, showcase the God mode, and answer any questions you like, and then do a bit of a Q&A if there are questions. We collected some, and that's it. So yeah, let's keep going. It's not polite to start with yourself, so I will say JD, in Dutch Jochem. Maybe you can kick off.
Yeah, sure. I'm JD, and I code the plugins for Denise with the help of several other programmers. So, yeah, I've been working closely together with all these guys you can see now, coming up with ideas and, yeah, writing some code.
Some code.
Yeah, I've been working closely together with all these
20
guys,
hours a day.
you can see now. It's a lot of code.
That's a bit different story.
Yeah.
And Enrico?
It's a lot of code.
hi.
He froze. He's out of the... Oh no, he's not.
Hi.
He froze. He's out of the... Oh no, he's not. I don't know, was it understandable for the rest of you? Because for me, Enrico was a big stuttering...
Yeah, it wasn't really intelligible for me, but let's see if he comes back.
Maybe you should reconnect. I don't know how it's acting in the live stream. Then maybe to Joe.
Okay, then I can introduce myself. Then I do kind of everything related to press and communication really for Denise. So if anybody sends an email, they generally speak to me. If anybody has a problem, they will speak to me. If anybody reads one of our press releases, they will also speak to me. And I'm also the voice on our walkover videos. So yeah, quite a big combination of things really. But yeah, any communication, you probably speak to me.
Yeah, and you're a drum and bass producer, so you're also a musician. That might be.
Yeah, exactly. I also make my music under the name Protocol. I've been doing that for about 12 years now, I would say. So yeah, I mean, I've got enough experience to understand most related to plugins. There's obviously some you learn. Learn a hell of a lot more about the technical side of plugins, I guess, rather than what you see on the front end plugins. So yeah, I like to bring my experience in and enjoy doing it.
What about yourself, Rob?
About me?
Yeah.
So I try to manage these people. It's not working. So I'm basically very... I do nothing. I try to encourage and support. And yeah, that's it. Does it make any sense, or is that vague as can
Very,
be?
very vague, but
Yeah,
that's
like
what we're used to from you, of course.
Very
Yeah.
vague, but yeah, I guess you are.
Very vague.
yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean that's it. I mean there might be, maybe it's good to check actually if the connection is audible good enough for everyone before we steam on, and then we find out that I read something in the chat that something is too loud or...
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. But he wrote that if he resets his connection, the whole thing will go down.
Okay.
Yeah. But kind of. Let's see how it looks in the live chat.
Here's
No,
I guess.
in the live he's also very frozen. So, Enrico, can you, if you restart it up to refresh your connection, will then the live stream be terminated? So, Enrico, can you, if you restart it up to refresh your connection, will then the live stream be terminated? So,
For example.
I think if we can't hear Enrico, Joe, let's see if we
Yeah.
can answer some of your questions.
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions on email. And we'll to questions from YouTube as well. Yeah, so this question is actually about the plugin that we got, the God mode. What inspired the God mode? What inspired its question?
No one knows what it is yet, but
Yeah, true. But I guess we can talk about a little bit about why we made such a plugin about saturation.
Yeah.
yeah, why?
Do you want to take it, Rob, or shall I do some explanation of what it actually does first?
Well, I'm checking if Enrico is going on, but well, I think, I mean, I will kick it off. It's interesting because we came up with the idea in winter, and we met in a coffee. Huh? Oh, no, and we came up with the idea in a coffee place around the corner from here, and it's basically was done by Enrico and JD. So yeah, but technically you can better ask JD because I didn't have much to do with it.
Rob is good at asking questions, so he will ask, for example, like take a saturation effect, like what can't you do with it, and what would make an effect like that like brilliant or great, and he would like challenge us to come up with new ideas. So we were like, how great would it be if we could create a saturation plugins where you have like exact control over where in the frequency spectrum you apply the saturation, and make it better than any existing solutions like multi-band multi-band distortions, or maybe, you know, a simple high, low, mid control on something. So he challenged us to come up with something better, and then
Did I?
Enrico, yes, you did. You did. In this bar you talk about. Yeah, so Enrico and I, I think we talked about it an hour or so, and we came up with this sort of push-pull idea that people may know from pool tech, where you would boost a certain frequency range into a saturator and then apply the reverse curve afterwards. With the idea that you can boost any frequency into the saturation curve and have full control about how much coloration you actually apply, and it gives you full control over the saturation coloration.
Yeah, what I like about it when I saw it, that it's simple and that it didn't seem to be out there yet in that form, because I mean you can fiddle around with multi-band, different bands, phases, and issue stuff, and that But the idea, you just have a simple graph and you say, okay, I want a bit of distortion in the high or over the full spectrum, or It's so simple. So yeah, that's that sounded appealing.
I think for me it means that the thing what you usually would use might be a multi-band compressor, where you have to apply saturation to a certain band, and you have limited control over the actual coloration or the filter shape, and also you would have to apply makeup gain for every band that you saturate, either up or down, and you're going to have these issues over time when your track is very dynamic. Like when a loud part hits, your saturation will react differently from when a soft part hits, and we wanted to make something that solves all these problems. And yeah, for me it works very well.
So expand on that. What kind of difference between regular multi-band saturation or saturation and this one?
We do not use a multi-band setup. So instead of splitting the signal in different bands and sort of processing them independently, which gives you, some surgical options, but also a lot of unpredictability dynamically. We use like an actual EQ graph that is like the traditional flexible EQ with nodes where you can just shape, the tone of the saturation like you want, and it gives you all the freedom as you would have with a regular EQ, which is for me like a real solution for getting exactly the saturation sound that I like. As you would have with a regular EQ,
Okay.
which is for me
Very nice.
a real solution.
Well,
Exactly the saturation.
want to add anything at this point? Anything about the topic that you can mention off the top of your head?
What might
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. No, what might be interesting is that our background in expertise, because Enrico, who unfortunately is in half frozen state, but we still see him. Like he's a professional producer, so his work, besides doing this, his main work is producing music, like through different genres.
Hear me.
So, like when we create new ideas, he is, if he's not, I mean, he's part of creating, but he's also the first person of reference because he understands very complex things. He uses or a lot, of course, plugins out on the market. So he's a real expert. It's the same for Joe, although he is maybe more focused on one specific genre, drum and bass. And
Mostly.
JD was, I mean, he doesn't do it actively anymore, but he produced also professional music, made money with it as his main thing. So they are the true experts, and music for me has been a hobby always. So I have a different point of reference. So I look more at it from an end user point of view in terms of simplicity, because
You are more objective in a sense, right?
yeah, but my unknowingness is also an advantage because the noob is questioned sometime is also a fresh perspective. So I also am forced to have a bit of this view. So because it creates a nice creative dynamic, like super high level, super abstract level, and that's a nice.
I have something to expand on that question because somebody's given us a question in YouTube. GBN. They are asking, and by the way, the plugin is now live at the Denise.io website, so you can actually go and look at it and find out a little bit more information for yourself. But the question is, does it have specific saturation types like tape, tube, drive, or warm? I would ask that to Joachim.
Yeah, like we've been working on this special saturation type that mimics tape with hysteresis, which gives you a really nice smooth tape saturation. People know it from the bad tape. We've been working on the algorithm for a while, to get it as smooth as we can, and so that's, I think, the main thing that we offer with God Mode. But it has two more saturation types that are actually distortion types, which morph like the waveform. We've got a warp that it warps the amplitude of the file of your tracks, so it will give you quite sort of high targeted distortion. And we've got another algorithm buzz that distorts the wave shape, and it will give you more of a bassy, like old-fashioned transistor type of distortion. And we offer these three essentially in parallel, so you can mix them in all together if you like.
Very nice. Okay. Next question from our email. Plugin latency. And how can it be adjusted? This is definitely a technical question for you, I would say.
Oh yeah, I think some people think that latency is just like your computer not being fast enough to process, but that's actually not what it means when you talk about plugins. So if you develop plugins, you essentially have no control over your computer, but you do have control over every part of the wave, every sample of the wave that comes in. So normally you would just process an audio wave while it comes in, but for some processes you need to like store audio in a buffer, and it means, for example, if you do anything like convolution or pitch shifting, or let's say, for example, convolution reverb, you need to prepare a buffer of audio before you can run like all these mathematical things on it, like FFT and convolution thingies. And because you have to buffer the audio, you have to wait until there's enough, and then you can process it, and then you can send it back to the audio. So latency is in that case very well defined. You can say, for my convolution reverb, I need 1024 samples, to buffer the audio, and then I process it, and then I send it back. So you're always 1024 samples late. And the thing is, you can report this to your DAW. So the plugin can tell to your DAW, like, okay, I have this latency of 1024 samples, and if your DAW has latency compensation or delay compensation, it will fix it for you while you're mixing. The only problem about these plugins is that if you use them while recording, everything happens in real time, and it's hard to compensate for it. So you might have some sync-in issues. That's actually why we put a live mode in the God mode plugin. So you can actually turn off the linear phase filters that use convolution and use regular filters, so you can just record with it without any latency.
Yeah.
Very nice. But this latency is a problem. All plugins, is it? Or at least.
Yeah, like if a plugin has latency, it has the same issues for everybody. So if you're used to them and you are like an in-the-box producer, you won't even notice because of the delay compensation of your DAW. However, if you do a lot of recording and you might suddenly put an effect on like a vocal track or something, and you feel, oh, fucking hell, this is out of sync, there's nothing you can do about it except for, if the developer has implemented some kind of live mode like we did in the God mode.
Okay. Next question.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
What's the downside of the live filters? Like, how much worse or better is it?
The live filters are like normal filters, so they're called IIR filters. They're done with a biquad, but in essence it means that they filter in real time, and they are like any other EQ you're used to that's not linear phase in a sense, but with a certain formula behind it. So there's no real downside, except for the fact that some people consider linear phase filters to sound better in certain areas. Like this is a very difficult topic to address without having a lot of discussions with people. So I'd say there's nothing wrong with live filters. The only thing in the God mode is that because we have a dry wet mix, when you have a wet signal that has been filtered and you mix it with the dry signal, you will get phase issues, in the sense that the phase on the filters of the wet signal will also influence the dry signal. And for the God mode, it's a bad idea to use live mode if you don't need it. I would say always use the normal mode, where the linear phase filters will be always synced between the dry and wet signal, so you have no phase issues whatsoever, and everything sounds nice.
Very nice.
By the way, it can be that Enrico is back. He closed Ableton. Or the
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hear you. We hear you.
wow.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Well,
Amazing.
I guess
Hi,
you can
guys.
introduce
Such a long
yourself.
time.
I guess you missed that bit earlier.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, so I'm Enrico Enrec as a producer. I produce, my job is like mixing engineer and producer, and basically I take care of the production and discovering what the plugins can do together with the other guys. We work closely with JD during the discovering of new features, let's say. And this is very interesting because I'm a producer myself, so I like to use a lot of plugins and also hardware gear. So sometimes we like to investigate on what is cool about these pieces of gear, or these features, and try to come up with something
Maybe
new.
it's interesting to say that the bad tape, it was initiated, I think, by Enrico. He said, "Can we make something like a bad tape?" And we were like, "What do you mean with a bad tape?" And then the feature list requirement comes, and then Jochem can say, or JD can say, "Well, that's totally not possible. That's that is possible.
What I like about Enrique, yeah, he has very
Yeah, that
creative
happens.
ways of mixing, and I think you come up with all kinds of ways to create movement and like tension in music. And there's not a lot of plugins that facilitate these techniques for you. So you will always come to me like, "Can you please fix this issue for me? I need like three
Yeah.
plugins for this," and then I try to figure something out that makes him happy, and somehow we come up with a new plugin idea, which is nice and gives me also keeps me on my toes and
Yeah.
creative.
What's maybe nice.
It's really interesting. Like I usually need something to destroy what I have already because it's so boring to just stick to what you have. So, for example, in the bad tape case, like I really used to run my audio through an old tape machine and touch it with my finger to slow it down and to make it move. And that was so much like a risk to do every day with my tape machine. So it was like, can you guys please like make something that fucks up my audio the way my old bad
Nice.
tape
I
does?
also, when you came up with the idea for the sweeper, for example, I was also very interested because it didn't sound that interesting to me until I heard what you did with it in your mix, and I was like, oh my god, why do I not know these mixing techniques? That is really nice to have this synergy with a to work, with a producer like you.
What's also nice to add to it is is once the process is there of
I
like,
agree.
because we like visually our plugins have a limitation. We cannot put, I mean, we could put in more buttons, but then we need to change the design. And our challenge is like to make it good and functional with not unlimited buttons, but to use also the limitation creative. So once a concept is come up, then I put that in the design and make sure it fits and feedback in. Is it easy to use? Is it something people actually like? And then Joe is the last filter because
Yeah.
he is like, if he doesn't like it, it's probably a bad thing because he has done a fresh look upon it, and we have to sell it to him. It's like, he would like, when we make the God mode, says, yeah, okay, but I have this from FabFilter. Why is it better? Or from FabFilter, or or from. So then we have to convince him that it's actually a good idea,
Yeah,
and maybe he calls up upon that something does is not good, or
yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll always be your harshest critic because I'm very stubborn with my techniques. So to break that mold a little bit, I'm always, I take a little bit more convincing, but then I know the arguments to tell people why you should change this one from the one you currently have.
But that's really nice. Somebody asking the why questions, like why would I change what I already do, or why would I do it this way?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you've been working, years on your technique, and it's like, well, what am I going to change now? We say if it's not broke, don't fix it. So
Yeah.
find a way to, kind of, I guess.
and Joe needs to prepare because he then has the mission to make the walkthrough, so he needs to understand the plugin. Otherwise, you cannot make that. So then, usually the point you get really into the plugins is when you use them for the walkthrough video, or for your,
Yeah,
or how.
yeah. Well, when they're kind of like all the information that I've been bombarded with kind of makes sense, and then I have a kind of a moment to get myself and go, oh yeah, actually this is great. I'm going to start using it. I convinced myself by
What's
that
actually,
point at least.
what is actually your favorite?
Of the plugin,
Yeah.
that most, I would say it's something like Basic Cell. It's one of the plugins, but I mean, one very it's kind of an alternative to an EQ boost. And I use it on air. Things that like the boost. I've swapped like a standard channel EQ for it works so much better. It's cleaner. You can get a much warmer sound from it. I mean,
I'm very curious now if like the God mode, when you boost it in the low end on the kick or on the bass, if it would have a similar effect for you.
yeah, I mean, it's a technique really. It's like a kind of adds harmonics essentially, right?
Yeah,
Saturation.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe I would need to use the good mode. I've only used it on one project for myself because I've really got the hang of it a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, to be able to start using it myself. So yeah, I mean, maybe time I would say God mode is my go-to plugin now for low frequency boost. So yeah, see. Just one more thing. We have a question from Craig. They wanted another explanation for the warp
Oh yeah.
and how it functions on any ideal case.
I think I'll leave the use cases to Enrico. But what it actually does, it just uses an amplitude formula with like, it's going into too much detail, but like a square root type of formula to sort of warp the audio, the amplitude of the wave, and it will give you certain harmonics.
Nice.
Does Enrico then also do an explanation?
Well, how would you use the warp, Enrico? You use it on synths a lot, I think, and when I talk to you.
Yeah, I think like my explanations are more like on the musical side. So every time I find myself using the warp, it's like when I want that extra. I think there's a lot of low end information in that distortion, and it doesn't sound harsh at all. So it's very very great, like for adding grit to synthesizers, for example, and anything that doesn't have to particularly sound natural, but has to like sound
What I
supernatural
like
in a
is
way,
that
like
it
God.
acts sort of
So
similar on every frequency in a sense. So you get a really balanced sound and the same sort of grid over your whole frequency spectrum. If you use like saturation, the first frequency that hits the saturation curve, like if you have a drum, the kick will boost like into the saturation, and the rest will be not saturated. But with warp, you will have an even saturated sound, which I like.
yeah, and for me, like it's kind
yeah.
of a pink noise kind of
Yeah, that's because
distortion. Like it's
because it
really really
reacts like
musical.
similar
So
to all frequencies in a sense with a certain curve. Yeah.
so far, like I've been using the tape everywhere, like in my newest latest productions. I really couldn't wait like to have the final version of the plugin myself, just to apply it everywhere. I think the tape sounds amazing. So I'm also curious to know what is the secret to, if we can talk about it. What is the
Can you
secret
open source the
about this tape
the
distortion
algorithm?
saturation?
No.
Well, we might. Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's just a combination of a few little things that make it sound really smooth. Like, for example, the fact that we sort of take the digital advantages and an analog approach at the same time. So we use like this nice curve where we boost the audio in, but it has like this hysteresis curve, so you can sort of compare it to the release of a compressor. So it will saturate without attack, but it will have sort of a tail in the release. So and this tail it moves with the control as well. So it will get shorter once you boost it. So you actually mix from analog to digital in a sense, and that's why we wanted to sound analog. When you use it a little bit, but if you push it, we want like real grit. That's really nice. And at the same time, yeah, we do some smoothing and mixing while it's still transparent on zero, which is also nice. I like that. That's the option for digital, that everything can be 100% transparent at zero, and it's not coloring only if you want it to. So I like that. That's the option.
Cool.
I agree, and I find myself also using the whole plugin sometimes as an equalizer. Like you can just keep the distortions and the saturations really low or at zero, and you can still intervene with the graph, and so you start equalizing basically, and then you can add the desired harmonics.
Yeah, then you have like
and then you can
the
still pull
opposite
them back.
effect actually. Like you can have, of course, a saturator with coloration, but you can also use it as an equalizer that saturates a little bit, which is also nice, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course you can like basically pull everything out of what you did with the graph, and it becomes kind of an exciter basically. So you are distorting the high frequencies, for example, but you're also mixing them with the mix knob. So you have like this parallel exciting or saturation, which is amazing.
Would you like take the whole
on a mix bus, for
saturate
example.
it, and then mix it in like slightly or something?
Yeah. Basically, what I've done, like on my latest 3 project, is like have the God mode on my mix bus, saturate the high end, pull back the frequencies
So you get a
to
little
taste,
shimmer
and
kind
then
of
mix
thing.
it in with the mix knob.
Oh.
And yeah, it basically sounds very much more glued together
But
and
that's nice maybe to
smooth,
know,
like
because some
less harsh,
people, they
basically.
think saturation is just adding harmonics, but with some types of smoothing going on, it's actually a dynamic effect, very much so. That's something I really like about certain saturation. That when you push it harder, it reacts, differently, and also in time. So it's not only that it makes harmonics because it's loud, but it also has this release tail or something like a compressor.
Yeah, and indeed, like what I like to do most is put it on my mix bus as I start mixing, not in the end. So everything reacts to it exactly how it should, and I can control it even better. I can adjust the settings during the mix process, but if you do it like at the start, everything is going to sound exactly as you want it, but
So
with
you
that
mix into
added,
it like your whole mix on the
shimmer or
master?
whatever it is that we want to call
Ah,
it.
that's cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Joe, are people actually still watching
Yeah,
and
we
stuff?
have uh, on
Because maybe
YouTube
we're.
and
I
similar
mean,
number on Facebook.
I feel like being lectured. I love this. You're just talking about audio technology, but maybe people are like, yeah, okay, whatever, lost it, and
Whatever, dudes.
like we're just talking again with the four of us.
There are people listening, and if we dive more into some technical information, let's find out how a phase filter works. That is one of the questions.
Ah, do you want to guys give it a shot?
I would trust you a hell of a lot more.
You go.
All right. So when you have a normal equalizer, you use like delayed copies of the signal and you mix them together. And because these delayed signals are out of phase, you can create these shapes. So some people don't understand it, but the phase issues are actually the EQ for a normal EQ. So they sometimes referred to as minimal phase or IIR filters, normal EQ. And then the problem is that if you say you have a dry wet mix of something like in the God mode, you want to filter one of them and then blend them two together. So you have a filtered signal and a copy that's unfiltered. Then the phase stuff will have moved all the frequencies around in time. So when you move it, together, it will create coloration. So what you would like is a filter that doesn't move the frequencies around, has no phase issues, just does the filtering without any without affecting the waveform in a sense. So imagine that you would want a linear phase filter. You could take your track and run it through an equalizer. Then you reverse your track and you run it through the equalizer again. Then you get like the double effect of the equalizer, but it cancels itself out. So if you're offline and you ever want to try the difference, you can just reverse your audio and run it through the same EQ, and it will work with the double effect. So every cut will be twice as low, every boost will be twice as high, but all the phase stuff will be compensated. So now the trouble is, how do you do it real time? You need to do it with convolution for these kind of things. So you take an impulse response of a filter, which is all super technical. Then you would convolve the impulse response with a reversed version of itself, and then use convolution actually to apply the filter. That's actually what it is. So it might be a little bit too hard to understand, but please ask questions. I'm very keen to answer.
You would want to know if the person who asked the question has a clear answer now,
Yeah, I have no idea.
because it could
It'll
go.
come through the email, so yeah, you can respond to that one.
Not
So I
sure how
should
much
tune
time
in
you
and
have. I can talk about linear phase filters all night.
so if the question, the person who asked the question is in the chat, actually maybe let us know if this helps or is just add more confusion possibly.
Possibly.
Possible. But the next question is when getting into working in the music tech world, somebody who's just left studying music at university. Would it be a question for Rob, considering he is the person who would decide on
No, I don't feel entitled to say anything. I mean, I have ideas and maybe some experience, but it feels that it's so fresh that to lecture anyone on what to do or not to do, I wouldn't.
But who would you hire, Rob, from straight out of school?
Who I would hire?
Yeah, like if somebody wants to go into tech, like what do we need to tell you?
Yeah, show it. Don't tell me. I mean, of course, like personalities have to match. I think also in a small team, and that's interesting. Also about people because it's nice to work with people who are all different. So if you don't have a personal match, I mean, I think it's always hard to get something going, as far as I know. But like when it comes to quality of work, like show it.
So you have to like a sort of proof of work. So yeah, if you make something and I can show you I coded this or I invented this or I made this concept, you would be happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's another example, but I mean, like what I noticed at some point, but this is about application, and what do I know? Because I'm was hired multiple times not. So I mean, but what is interesting, I mean, what this is just what I personally like. So if someone writes like, let's say we look for someone for marketing, and they say, yeah, I'm ideal for this position and blah blah blah. But what I like is just okay. I have experience in marketing because I set up a channel and engaged 2,500 followers within a month, and I scaled it up to this. Like show it.
Yeah, yeah.
And with it for engineering, it might be yeah. So in music in production, I mean, for instance, with Enrico, like we were in a very early stage of Denise, and we wanted to see if we can get further with the quality of the examples we made. So we thought like, well, maybe it's good to hook up like with a producer. So I went online. I was lucky this time because it can be very hard to find nice people to collaborate with. Sometimes it's easy. We just went online, like Berlin producer, like search Google, and then there was this website. Enrico, what was it called?
Yeah, it was
Sound
Sound Better.
Better.
I found you there as well.
I think it was Sound Better.
Yeah.
So he was there.
I think there was
Yeah,
like
it
a
was just-
massive gent track on there.
Like there was this text which I don't remember what is. It was well written, like engagingly written. The pictures were good. It was like very artistic, and then it press play on like a show reel, and it was like, what the fuck? I mean, this guy can produce so unbelievably well. That's like super cool. So I just sent him an email, and apparently he was not big enough yet to be unreachable. So I didn't have to go through management or, yeah.
We actually had a beer like
Oh yeah.
at
It was fun
Noordfabriek.
because Rob called me one day
We
and
met
said,
at
I found this
Noordfabriek.
producer and like he's really good. And he also produces Gent. And I was like, yes, we need to get this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. Look, get him.
And that was the first thing that he told me, like, hey, JD, our programmer, is like a very
Yeah.
big fan of Meshuggah. I was like, I mean, you know?
But the advice, yeah, I wouldn't know because, like I said, I don't feel have the experience. I mean, we're doing this for a year and a half with this very small group of people. So, I mean, doing cool stuff and showing that, yeah. But maybe that's also the obvious. I don't know, Jochem or JD. You have anything?
No,
to
I
add to
think
this
it's the
here?
same. Like when people email about work or something, I like if they have built something, and it has taste or something, and they thought about it, and they have this, they show this process behind it. That's what I find interesting. Like if somebody has a story around it and has actually created something, that's for me like a big indicator that somebody is, learning and developing, and that's what I like. If I work with people, I always like that they consider themselves a work in progress, which I consider myself all the time, and just try to be better at what you do and compete with yourself a little bit. Yeah, I like that.
It's interesting. I mean, it's obviously not true, and it's a vague thing I remember. But I remember reading something like how good someone is compared like their skills, like the difference you have in someone who has a lot of experience versus none is equaled out in half a year. So someone's attitude towards something is especially on a mid long term, like way more important. So I don't think it's an absolute truth, but it's a guide. So
Yeah,
to what you say, it's like if you have someone who goes for it, it shows it. That's more valuable than
definitely. And I think it's more valuable than a CV for me. Like I work with 3 guys at the moment, Sil, Bas, and Ronald. shout out. They all are so talented, and they all have such a specific life story and such a specific goal. It's just great, to have people that are engaged in what they do and inspired to, move it forward and learn and, live in a sense, this tech life. Yeah.
Yeah. But how to be hybrid by Ableton or by native, I couldn't tell. I mean, I was declined by native 6 years ago, so apparently you should not listen to what I.
Well, actually, this brings us on to one of our next questions. Excuse me if I've already asked, but which is how does somebody get into building plugins?
That's another one for me.
I think a lot of you actually. How does somebody get into building plugins, and are there any help you with plugin coding?
All right. Well, when I tried to get into it, I couldn't find anything like so many years back, and I had an idea for a plugin and I wanted to make it. So I went looking for programmers, but I just couldn't find them. Up until I find one person who wanted to help me, and he showed me some resources. For example, the books of Will Perkle, they helped me a lot. They're like he made this sort of software application where you can build plugins in, and you actually write C++ code, and he has these books to accompany it, which is really great. That was what got me started. Then I got into iPlug, and I went on the forums and I talked to all these people, and then I went over to Juice, which is a little more complicated, but also has a nice forum and has good tutorials. But the problem is that where do you start? Like the entry level is so high because you have to learn C++, DSP, software architecture, like for plugins. You have to understand audio. So I would say there are only a few resources out there, and I'm gonna point you to one of them. It's the Audio Programmer from my friend Joshua. Check him out. And I've been working with him myself because I set up a website. It's dev.io, where I'm planning to do some courses for people who are absolute beginners and who just want a free introduction to something. So, they learn some C++, some DSP, something about a framework where you can build an actual plugin in. I think there are maybe 2 or 3 more things out there. But yeah, I would like what some people do is they try to become good at programming first, but I would just dive straight into the plugin world and don't care about software development in general, but just if you're like an audio engineer and you're doing music, just go for it straight away. Look at the Juice forum, look at the iPlug forum, look at the RecFX forum from Will Perkle, and just try to get as many information as you can and build something like we said about people wanting to get into business. Just try to build something. Don't stick with the theory. Just go for it.
I think what's also interesting is what JD, what you told me many times is that, like as an audio engineer, going into DSP development is much easier than being a full-blown C++ programmer and then learning how a good compressor should sound.
Yeah, that's what I always tell people, which I might get into a few fights about. But I personally, I believe that if you've been an audio engineer all your life, you can learn like basic C++ and basic plugin skills in a year. But the other way around, like say you have been a software developer for 20 years, it's very hard to become like a mix engineer with an intuitive feel for audio in a year. So I would say to audio engineers, just try it out. If you look into it, you will, like if you program your first algorithm or your first effect, you'll immediately understand if it sounds right if you are a mix engineer. If you are into software already, I would say learn mixing and mastering first before you like really go into coding algorithms. For me, it has always been very easy, to get into coding of plugins because I already knew how everything should sound because I have produced so many music just as an amateur. But it was more than enough to understand what I was looking for when writing an algorithm in code.
Well, maybe it's also.
And can I add something to this formula? Like when you want to become like a mixing engineer, like listen to a lot of music, because that's where it comes from. Like you have to really listen continuously to new music and understand what kinds of sound you can produce, and then start mixing, and then start coding, and
Yeah.
then start whatever you want.
Maybe what's also interesting to add
Love what
is,
you do.
in theory, that would be a review, but like besides Denise, we're working on a platform which should enable also or especially hobby DSP programmers to don't care about the hassles of distribution and coding where possible. It's in a very early stage, but maybe ideal wise, you would just have something like a template you can already work in and just focus on the DSP code and just
Maybe
publish it.
like when I finished my first plugin at one point, when I was essentially an audio engineer or producer, and I learned how to code, and I made this plugin, I was like, oh wow, I want to share this. It took me like a long, long time, maybe 2 years, to get from this initial plugin to the way I could release it.
Yeah.
And I think, Rob, what you're trying to say is that we're trying to build some platform that would allow you to come there with this first plugin idea, and you created something that's very creative, and we take care of like the distribution stuff and all this technical stuff like code signing, protection schemes, preset management, all this technical stuff.
Also, but I mean that definitely, but I think this is almost because nothing is in concrete, so it can all it's just, but like when you think about it, for if you start producing, it would be great if you have maybe a template project where you can work in, where you can just focus on what is actually about, so not maybe setting up C++ or everything, but just being able to. I don't know how well that is developed currently, but there's maybe also space to make that more accessible.
That's quite a question, because we have something on stage and that's kind of being used it now.
Yeah, that's very early stage. I will check it again in 2 months.
Yeah, I think.
But this is the first plugin where we have you actually require a code.
That is true. I think we are trying to, get the plugins to the next level, from a technical perspective, and it will all be pieces of technology that will be integrated in a platform that we want to share with other, like novice plugin developers or people who just are looking for a great solution to distribute, their creative ideas, instead of having to figure out themselves how to build a website, how to do distribution, all this technical stuff.
Yeah, and also solve the pain of the end user, because if you're producing music, you just basically want to be able to collaborate with other people and to easily work on multiple devices and not carry around a dongle or complex stuff.
Yeah,
but it's very abstract. But maybe in 2 months we have another live stream, and then we have something to present.
Yeah, sure.
I see this question, Joe, about the difference between multi-band saturation and the God mode saturation.
I think we covered that, have we?
We have already covered
that
it?
one we already covered back. How does saturation work, and how is it different from distortion?
All right. I think distortion in general is just a way to describe that you warp or change a waveform. So you have maybe a nice sine waveform that sounds really clean, and if you make like discontinuities in it, or you change the wave shape, distort the wave shape, it will create harmonics automatically. And I think saturation is a specific type of distortion that reacts to how loud a signal is. For example, tape saturation, it will be if you have a tape with audio on it and the audio would be loud, the tape would sort of hold back the signal and create like a different shape on the loud peaks than on the soft peaks, creating a very specific kind of saturation, which is very pleasing in this case. And for example, a tube on a guitar amp will do the same thing. The louder you put in the signal, the harder it will push back and create harmonics because of the signal gets warped.
From Facebook regarding multi-band saturation and codes, go for it because that's from somebody on Facebook, Chiara.
Yeah, I think the multi-band distortion works by splitting a signal in different bands, and then you might have control over the slope, but yeah, you have limited, opportunities to shape the sound of it. And also you will have to, push or distort one of these bands and compensate for the gain differences because of the saturation, and it will not be in phase when you dry mix it. So it's a really great tool if you want to do extreme effects that doesn't require a lot of subtle flavor. But in the God mode, we make use of this push-pull technology, where you can essentially use any EQ curve, push it into a saturation curve with a certain sound, like a regular EQ, and then pull back on these boosted frequencies again by applying inverse filter curve, which actually solves all the issues of multiband compression. You will have full control over how you shape your EQ curve. It will be in our case linear phase, because we're using linear phase filters. So if you have a dry wet mix, it will be perfectly in sync, so you can balance it out, for example, by mastering, like Enrico told before. If you just have a copy of the track and you saturate it in a certain way, you mix it in slightly, you won't have any phase issues. And the last thing is, you won't have any dynamic issues, because if you just use an EQ curve to boost into saturation, it will always be stable. While if you use multiband, you have to expect like a multiband to react differently to a signal, like a track that becomes like loud, for example, in the chorus, and then goes back in the verse. It will react differently, which is a pain in the ass to control.
Maybe to Enrico, maybe you can elaborate then on the production aspect of that.
So,
Yeah, versus the God
you mean
mode.
about
I mean,
like the
maybe it's not a
multiband
wise question to ask, but is
distortion?
there, if you have the God mode, a scenario you would actually still use a multiband, or how
Yeah,
does that?
honestly, no. There's maybe a few cases where like the adjustments that I need to do are that simple that I can just split it in maybe two bands, like leave the low end alone and just work on the rest of the frequency spectrum. But overall, like what this God mode can give me is like perfect linear phase. So in any case, I wouldn't use like a multiband actually, because the multiband. The second thing is like the multiband works like in steps. So you have like the first step might be like the low frequencies, and then you have like mid frequencies, or how many steps you want, but it's going to be all separated one from the other. While with these frequency curves, you can go completely like smooth and create different kinds of how would you say, like saturation along the curve. So if you go from 100 hertz to 300 hertz, you can gradually boost it, and that's not possible at all with
You can also go like
multiband
really resonant, right?
distortion.
I've seen you
So
do stuff with like these really narrow peaks to accentuate certain. Yeah.
yeah, that's very true. That's very true, and that creates all kinds of like new effects, because you can even like take an equalizer and give it a peak before you go to the God mode, and then emphasize that peak and distort it as hell, and you're going to create a completely new texture. You can emphasize like a resonant peak on what you have, and that is something undoable.
It's a pity your
like,
Ableton
with
crashed
multiband
because,
distortion.
or didn't crash. The bandwidth didn't allow it, because then you could show us.
Yeah, my CPU is taking fire. But we might try to have a look at the show reel.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think there's a few things that we can watch.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, let's try this.
Then the
Who are we if we're built together? Who am I when standing on my own? And who are you when nothing
Cool.
You made that track, Enrico.
No.
Shout out to Tasha Baxter. She's an artist I'm working with at the moment, and this is her very brand new single, which I didn't do. I'm working on new stuff with her. I think it's very interesting. Also, like to talk
By the way,
about
her
the
single is out
sidechain
today.
feature.
Really?
No, it's,
Uh,
yeah,
That's cool.
nice. Is it true? Yeah, if you go to YouTube, you find a full track.
I think so.
and the whole EP. The link to it, I mean.
Yeah, and so she is releasing her single today, and we are working on a new EP, which is going to be out around the end of the summer, I guess. It's going to be a little more, I would say, art pop in a way, like a little less EDM or bass music, let's say, but we still like our big low frequencies. And for this, like God mode, of course, it's going to be everywhere in almost every track
One more
that we are
question
doing.
It's the code, not even by email, but it's where is there a place for it library as well?
How
So
do you
at the
mean?
moment, code by is there somewhere where the license will be displayed on the Denise website as well?
Is that a
At least
request?
a request.
I
Yep.
could make it. It's like we were crunching this. Like the website was only finished maybe half an hour or so before we went live. Same as the videos. We finished the editing yesterday. But yeah, so you want probably in your library that you click on the plugin and then you have like your license key.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, I thought about that. We
Okay.
could do that. Why? But you get the email.
I would love that
But
myself.
is it in case you lose the email that you don't have to email like, hey, I lost my license key, I was drunk, and it's in my email box. But
Something like that. For sure.
no, it's a very genuine. I would like that myself too. I think just so you have a concise place where all your information is.
Yeah, for sure. There are new questions, but is there anything we would like to summarize on it, like finish on the license?
Well, I would say that I'm curious if people actually liked it, and I can feel the atmosphere. I think we liked it. So if there is a desire to do it again, we can do it and just shoot any questions. So yeah, maybe feedback on it. If it was it too short, was it too long, was it boring? Should we stick to a certain subject more? Should we do it again? Should it be once and never
Should
again?
we wear
You
wigs?
know? But if there is a request to do it, I think
So yeah, just make any questions, contact at denise.io. One person, great, thanks Jack Wilkins for letting us know. But also free to send us any emails at contact at denise.io, and I will be the one to pick them up and pass them on to the team.
so the next time you're swearing and raging,
I will deal with it in a calm and collected manner, like always.
yeah. Awesome. So has anyone last words?
Well, obviously, anybody who does the God mode is actually now the website. A few of you have already told us that you bought it and are already enjoying it. So, yeah, feel free to
that's cool.
go there and download the file and find out if it's actually a plugin for you.
Yeah, perfect.
We're
Yeah, that
gonna
track
cook
is
you
really
like a
nice. Is that
fucking
actually
lasagna.
also on? Is it on the? Is it out already? Is it on SoundSpot or SoundSpot?
I made it
That's
for this plugin, so
Really?
I guess
Oh,
yeah. I guess I can finish it, and you know what? I was thinking I could make a project with all those plugins. Basically, it's all Denise plugins. So while my project didn't work today, I might even share it online,
that's
and
insane.
we can show some tips and
A
tricks
lot of
that people might
examples on
open.
all the previous plugins on the website. I mean, from some I know it, they're not from albums or things. It's just like a little snippet. But when I work with it, putting it in the website. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I want like the full track, and it's just, oh no, it was just an idea, just a thingy. Maybe that's a good album concept. Finished.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I also like suggest that to the producers out there that are working with our plugins? Me myself, I'm very curious to hear what you guys are doing. So I would like to start seeing some of your stories about what you are doing with our plugins, and maybe share them with us, because we are very thirsty of hearing our plugins in the mix. So maybe we might even create a hashtag, something like that, and you guys can use it to share your projects with us. If you want.
I think in general
Or
we
you can
would
keep them to
we would like to
yourselves.
have feedback on the products, and we would like to keep working on them and improving them, and any help is welcome.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
As
So
one
let's.
of the things somebody's asked us to plug all our social pages. So we are on most social sites: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, of course, and Instagram. And you can get involved in the forums like Gearsluts is quite a common forum we're involved in, and KVR as well. Just search Denise Audio, you'll find us with a big logo shaped like a kind of EQ. So we're very hard to miss.
And no one asked why we're called that. So we can save this for a time someone actually is. Yeah. Okay, cool. So shall we end it?
Next time.
All right, thanks guys.
Okay. Cheers.